Alright, welcome back to Driveway. Today we are not working on the Crossfire and we're not working on the nicely painted trailer back here. We are taking another turn and we're going to work on something completely different over here on the workbench. So let's just go over and check out what we got. Alright, so what you're looking at here is a new computer build. So, I decided I needed a more powerful computer than the one I've been clacking away on for quite a few years. And I decided to take this big old behemoth out of the mothballs in the attic and fire it back up again. So, let's just take a quick look at what we're dealing with. This is an old Thermaltake Pcie. This is the big pimpin' of many years ago. It might have been one of the very first purpose-built computer cases for water cooling. So what you ended up with was this neat operation. So it's an all extruded aluminum, and over here on this wall there is a radiator. And of course they had the guard. We had that in there. Then you had two fans. So I basically decided that we need to bring this thing into the modern century here. So I gutted the old fans. These were front and rear fan on it as well. So I took these out. We'll stuff them away in the top shelf there. Maybe we'll use them on the Crossfire for like a differential cooler or something like that. And anyways, we went through, gutted everything. Old floppy drive media reader. We don't really need that anymore. This is just an old storage tray with a classic phone. Now we're talking. So that's definitely showing its age here. And all the wires and everything here. So we got old firewire. Yeah, I don't think we're doing firewire anymore these days. And then just a couple USB ports. And then we got all our other wires. So that's essentially there. So for the radiator, I decided to pick up these really nice Noctua fans. These are like their highest quality that they got rolling these days. So we're going to take these, mount them up under our radiator pieces. These are specially designed for higher pressure, so they're great for radiators. So we're going to mount up a couple there. Got another one for there. And then we are going to throw in another 240 millimeter radiator set up in the front with another two fans. And then we'll throw another fan in this reverse exit, and we'll be pretty well set. So that's how that's going to go. We will stuff all these away in the case. Throw this guy on top. And here's the old water block. This was for I believe it was a AMD 64X2 3800 plus. Something along the lines of that. So we'll stuff all this away, and this is a nice old Swiftech water pump. You can see manufacture date of 10/9. This was a replacement for the old Thermaltake one, which was way too small for what I was doing. Because I had a CPU block, then either a north or a south bridge chipset cooler, and then I ran it through a graphics card cooler, and then also into a hard drive cooler for the Western Digital Raptor drive that I had. So I think there was way too much things it was passing through. So that one blew up, and we got this one here that I don't remember paying as much as they're going for these days. Because they still make this model for like 85 bucks. Anyways, rattling on. Alright, so now we can just start looking at what we got, seeing what we're going to do with them. Now I decided that since I was going to put the new radiator in there, like the front here, I probably aren't going to be able to use this, and probably what, 3 of those. So a radiator will pretty much sit right up in there. And then the other issue that we had is this particular case with its buttons and everything left you with a spot for a floppy drive. But we don't use floppy drives anymore, so that's kind of ridiculous to have that. So what I decided to find, like it took a while of searching around, but I found a USB 3 drive device. So this way we'll have a few more USB 3. We don't necessarily need them, but why not? Alright, so anyways, that will feed right in here. This also has a mount, so we can mount a 2.5 SSD if we so desire. But that's that. And then I also picked up this media reader, USB thingamajig, and yeah. So it's got a fan controller. I'm hoping to run the water pump off of this. So that way we'll have control of the water pump. So that'll mount right up in there. Somewhere in there. It's got its cords. Those are both Silverstone items, but that's pretty much gonna bring us to where we need on that part. So let's just look at our real equipment that we got going on here. Picked up a Gigabyte motherboard. So there we go. Gigabyte Aorus Elite. So it's got room for, so we got 2 M.2 drive spots. One here, one there. This has its own little heat spreader piece. So that's kind of cool. Socket AM4, got your usual myriad of USB devices. So they'll be quite nice. Yeah, we do have LED, so we can control some LED stuff. Lots of fun stuff that we got going on there. Let's see what else we got with this operation. Got a couple SATA cables. So this is a way to a plug to wire up the buttons and LEDs and stuff. Back in the old days, we used to have the little jumpers that we'd put in there ourselves. So that's kind of neat. A couple screws. Must be for the NVMe hard drives. Yeah, that's not too bad. Let's just take some of our covers off here. Get that plastic peel off. So it's actually kind of interesting how they have this heatsink set up. Probably for all their voltage regulators, all the VRMs and everything. It looks like what they're interfaced to. So, not too shabby. Now, where else do we go? We got our little NVMe drive. So I picked up one of these Sabrent. It's a PCI 4 version, so it should be the fastest we've got around. Perfect for our PCI 4 based motherboard. And that's kind of fun. It's like a long ways we went from the big plattered hard drives to this terabyte in a tiny little form factor. So this pretty much goes with these guys. And close that guy up. Put her off there. And instead of using this built-in heatsink, I got this version that has its own little heat pipe heatsink. So it's got this neat little heat pipe setup. I thought that was kind of a neat concept. So we'll keep the instructions over here just to make sure that my guessing is correct. Box over there. And it comes with its own little screwdriver and a couple screws. So that's pretty neat. Then of course, picked up some Trident RAM. I got two 16 gig kits, or two 16 gig sticks. So this is good for 32 gigs. This is a 3600 megahertz. It's a 16, 19, 19, 39 latency, if you know what that is. That was kind of difficult to try to find a set of RAM because there are just so many versions of it. A lot of them had really bad latency timings, which doesn't necessarily make a big deal for certain things, but I just wanted to get every ounce I could. And then onto the main show here. What we picked up was a Ryzen 9 3900. So that is a 12-core, 24-thread CPU. So that is one serious processor. Take a quick gander here. And there we are. It's a simple little Ryzen chip. There's nothing super special, at least on the outside of it. So not too bad going from the size of everything to how they are now. Lots of pins too. So we got that. And that, of course, comes with its own air cooler. So this is your stock AMD Wraith cooler. I believe it has RGB going on. Something along the lines of that. Wonder how that works through 4 wires. Unless it just automatically does stuff based on switches. But anyways, if we can get really close up in here, you can probably see the grains from the sanding. So, although this is a decent cooler for what you get, especially with the direct to pipe heat pipes, I decided I wanted to stay true to the machine there and go full water cooling. So instead of that, I picked up this Thermaltake Pacific water block. And this is a nice nickel plated. You can see there's a much better finish on it. And although nickel is more resistant to thermal transfer than the copper that is plated onto, it should be good enough for what we need. So this is another RGB one, so this will all light up nice and pretty. That's that. I suppose that really only brings us back to the video card. Now I picked up a 5700 XT. This is essentially the best card that's worthwhile from AMD. Now you do not have to stick with AMD processor and AMD card. I just tend to go with AMD 99% of the time because I prefer to support kind of the underdog, because the last thing I want is for companies like Intel and GeForce, NVIDIA, to essentially have a monopoly on the operation. So the moment you have a monopoly, then you stop having innovation. So I try, as long as I'm within a certain dollar to performance rating, I will almost always go with the underdog. So anyways, this is a Sapphire Pulse. It's a lightly overclocked version. I've tended to like what Sapphire brings to the party on plenty of builds. I have beat the absolute tar out of video cards I've gotten from them, and they've just taken it and kept going, overclocked and everything. So that should be pretty darn nice. And in the back, we got a whole bunch of plugs. So I got what? 3 display ports and an HDMI. So that will come in quite handy. So the astute among you will see that I am kind of missing a part. The power supply is going to show up tomorrow, so that's not going to do you guys any good, and it doesn't really matter to us because we'll just start going here, and through the magic of video editing, it'll just be here right when we need it. So basically, I'm going to start off by bench testing this, because since we're doing liquid cooling, that is going to take quite some time. You don't want to hold up the possibility of having to RMA something. So that will be that. Let's see. Well, ain't that nice? They tell you on the board itself. Before, we would have to read the instructions to see which DIMMs we're supposed to populate first. But it says we should populate these guys first. Isn't that nice of them? There we go, RAM is in. It's just as simple as that. They only go in one way. If you try to put them in the other way, like say you switch them around here and try to put them in, you can tell that they are wibble wobble and you can't push it down. So it's not. A lot of people worry about whether they're doing it correctly. And quite frankly, they make all these computer items super idiot proof. Some of the really ancient RAM you could install one way or the other, so you actually had to pay attention to a gold mark that they had on it, but now with these modern ones it doesn't really matter. So got the RAM in. Let us just throw our CPU in there just so I don't drop it and have it fly all over the place. And these, just like everything else, you can only put in one way because the pins only fit that way. But another easy way to tell is usually the etching for Ryzen or whatever is same direction as the socket is, but that's pretty simple. And then since we got some stuff pre-applied there, we can just throw this down. Let's see, does it have a care? It does not look like it has a care. And that's all mounted. Now, way back in the day, you used to not have the heat spreader on the CPU chip, so any angle that you did would actually destroy the chip. That was some great times back then. Pick one of these CPU fans and plug her in. Alright, now next, let's read how they want us to shove this little guy together. Alright, so that's our little 1 terabyte SSD drive. Well, NVMe if you want to get particular with it. So, what we'll need next is we have this little standoff and screw. I guess we don't have to like crank it down because it's not going anywhere. So that's in and that's in. Our video card interferes with that. Of course it does. So we will have to relocate that to up here. Yeah, that works. So, there we are. We're done. Okay. So, in all actuality, we are pretty well done for this moment in time, because I'm going to have to wait for that power supply to show up before I can fire it up, because I don't want to grab an old one. Alright, so our power supply came in. RM850X from Corsair. So it is the nice modular. That way I don't have to figure out where everything goes. Back in the old days, trying to manage all of these wires sticking out of your power supply was a pain. That's where we only want to put in the ones that we have or need. So we will just start jacking the power into the motherboard over here. Ah. There we go. That's what I was expecting to see. So it fires on up. So that's kind of what I wanted to see. Make sure everything turned on. And apparently we need both the powers. It's been a long while since I had anything that needed a power for the video card. It used to just be the standard old Molex that you just jam right in there. So that is doing nice. I could probably grab the keyboard. Let's see, what's our magic number to get in? Are we a delete board? Uh-huh. Well, ain't that something? Alright, I say we tear this pig down and start assembling it. Alright, so we got the radiator all plugged back in here. So we are good to go there. We got the radiator and we got our exhaust fan there. Hooked up the Y cable and extension cable so we can reach the motherboard. Now all we gotta do is get this thick boy out here. And we can see what we want to mount. Got a bunch of different screws. Now Now the big thing we're going to run into is this radiator, or this case, isn't made for front mount radiators. So we're going to have to rig something up for that mount ourselves. So that's going to be entertaining. But all right, well, here's the Noctua fan. They provide you with this neat little gasket there that seals everything around radiators quite a bit better. So that will be a thing. And we're using the medium screw that they provided. So that's quality there. Alright, that's much better. This way I can have the in and out at the top and have the wires on the back. So that way I don't have to deal with that disaster. Let's see, let's find an extension cable. So nice that they provide you with extension cables, because that would suck otherwise. And this will just pretty much slide right here in the front. But we're going to have to make ourselves a bezel here. I don't know, I'll have to see what I can find out there in the pile. Maybe I'll have a aluminum piece that I can put the brake on, slide in there, hook into the hard drive screws, and this will mount right on the front. But that will have to wait for another day when I get the rest of my parts. There we go. Alright, gave it a good wipe down with some acetone. Now it's time for a little compound here. Alright, now back in the old days you used to just put one single dot in the middle, because with the old processors you only had a small little die right there, so that would be your only hotspot. Now with Ryzen there are like 3 different spots, so we're just going to go with probably the X pattern here. And then since we got these little spatula guys, we can use them to kind of smooth it out a little bit. See what type of coverage we're getting. I can definitely tell that we have got plenty on here. Probably too much. So I'm gonna take a tad bit off. Like, we only need enough to fill the void in the microscopic world of these processor faces. So we don't need a pound and a half of it. So now we got that on. All right. Well, I think we're on. Doesn't look like it's going anywhere anytime soon. All right, so with our case, I still have the old hold downs or standoffs, there you go, from the previous computer. Let's get rid of the old I/O panel. Pull in some more wires, 'cause why not? All right. All right, so I have cursed at this thing for quite some time to try to get all the hoses routed. It was kind of a bigger pain in the butt than it needed to be. I definitely understand now why the whole radiator in the door didn't take on very well. For starters, this fan sticks out way too much for these big video cards these days. Apparently they made cards quite a bit smaller. It probably would have fit just fine if it wasn't for all these heat pipes. So I switched over to just a single fan. Hopefully that's still good enough there. And this is going to be the weird looking one for most people, because it's just kind of out here in the middle of nowhere. But there is definitely a reason for that. So we got all that in there. Cables managed away as best as possible. We got our reservoir there and our pump down there. And we got our second radiator out here. So this here I'm gonna have to grab some aluminum and make a mount for it. So it mounts in these 5 1/4 bays. So that should be an interesting little build there. But where this weird hose comes out is being able to tuck the hose in and away. So that way the door will shut. And if you can see it, there is no kinks in the hoses. So, we're keeping the basic functionality of this historic case, I guess you could call it, and we're just about there. Now we're down here. I'm gonna have to, I've got a essentially what you would usually have for USB 3 rear panel. I'm going to take it off of its panel piece and leave it inside so I can plug these guys in for our front control. That little thing down here. So that will kind of be that. And interestingly enough, we got another fan. So that's what we're going to do this time around. So we're going to get that bracket and possibly this other fan hooked up in there, and then we'll just get to filling it full of some sort of liquid and firing it up and see what we can do with it. Alright, so here's my slab of aluminum. Now I'm just going to tape it off so we don't mess up everything. good straight edge. All right. Then I need to go 120 on either side. So that will carry us up to about there. All right, so this basically means I need to put my bend here and here, and then I can start a hole saw right here in the middle, and it'll cut out the holes for the fans. Then we'll just have to come through and drill a couple holes to run the screws in. So we're gonna have to bend this thing. And I'm thinking the most appropriate way to bend it is probably with a screwed up press brake. Yay. All right, so there it is, all mounted up in there. Looking pretty industrial-like. Now we can close her in. Everything seems to be sitting up there nice and pretty. Now since it's insanely cold out here, I can't put any liquid in it, so we're just gonna have to drag it up to the house. And get it settled in up there. All right, so there's the final look. We got some blue coolant running through there after I ran some system clean through it. Kind of tried to tune the RGB that we got going on in there to that same color. And do we need RGB? We definitely do not, but we may as well. So now it's time to kick this thing up and see what it'll do. Alright, so I'm going to pull up some quick benchmarking that was run here on the new system versus the old system. Like the old one was an FX 850, kind of one of those quasi almost 8-core but not really, bulldozer AMD style. So you can tell we got quite a bit of difference there. So yeah. Now the real question is going to be, is this all that there is? Well, let's go see if we can find just a little more numbers here in some tuning of the system. And this is going to be checking to make sure that the RAM is running at the capability that it's supposed to, and all that fun little stuff in there that isn't exactly for the faint of heart. So let's get rolling there. Alright, so after some minor tweaking, we got quite a few more numbers. As you can see over here, we had 5944. Now we're up to 6685. And the big one was down here with the memory. And essentially all that I ended up doing was just dialing in the memory clock. Since I'm using 3600 RAM, it kept wanting to run at what would that be, like 1100. So that gained quite a bit there. And then the other thing that I found that's kind of interesting as you watch everything is it'll go through and rank each little CPU. We've got a 12 core, so we got 3, 6, 9, and 12. So if we were to, let's just fire open Cinebench here just for fun. click the run button. Let us do its thing over there. You can see that all its cores are boosting up to about 4 gigahertz. And each bank, so since the Ryzen chip has 2 actual silicon banks of 6 cores each, yeah. Well, anyways, if I wanted to maximize more power, I would go through and clock each of these individual ones to their highest speed that they could go. This one here has definitely seen 4.6 before, which is its top boost. So we could actually go through and overclock this one to 4.6, and the rest of them could probably hold 4.2, but you know what? I don't really care, because this is a heck of a lot faster than my previous one. So that's pretty much where these are running down here. The old one, and so our old one, 1188 versus, what do we get on this one? 7024. So I would say that's a sizable increase. I should be pretty happy with this one for quite some time. So I guess that's it for this build. Who knows how incredibly long this video is, because there's a lot of stuff packed into it. Anyways, thanks again for stopping by, and we will see you later.